Y'all already know who it is, man. It's your boy Underrated Major. Today I'll be doing a video discussing the strongest dragon in Fairy Tail. Now, when it comes to Fairy Tail, I've already done videos discussing the strongest dragon slayer. I've been ranking all these other strong characters, but I've never really done a video discussing the strongest dragons. And we know that dragons in Fairy Tail are pretty much the strongest beings, and I've always wanted to do a video discussing who I think the strongest dragons are, and what better time than now, because right now we are getting into some spooky things when it comes to the dragons in Fairy Tail, and I want to do a quick list discussing who could be the strongest dragon in Fairy Tail. Now, this list is going to consist of the top 3 strongest dragons in Fairy Tail. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, number 1 on this list, well, the first candidate that I'm bringing up is Igneel. Yes, I had to bring up the king of fire dragons. And number 1, the reason why I had to bring up Igneel is because he's obviously the king of dragons way back before obviously Acnologia and them came along. We know that Igneel, he was well respected amongst all the dragons, and pretty much he set the tone of how all the other dragons should act, because not every dragon in Fairy Tail is good, but we know that all the good ones, they pretty much either look up to Igneel or admire him or pretty much friends with him because they see how he acts towards humans and stuff. So definitely Igneel, he does set the tone for pretty much a lot of the good dragons, and not to mention the fact that they all pretty much crowned him the king, so they do recognize his strength. So number 1, Igneel's, his demeanor, his strength, everything, that's all characteristics of somebody who could be the number 1 dragon. Now, we're talking about his powers. We can't forget the fact that he actually did defeat Atlas Flame. Yes, we know that Atlas Flame, he was pretty much the first dragon that Natsu was introduced to, and we know that Natsu pretty much calls him uncle because Atlas Flame served under Igneel. In fact, he was basically like Igneel's like little pet, like in a, probably, it's kind of disrespectful to say this, but it's true, because Igneel literally just ate off of Atlas Flame, and he literally just had him like tied down underneath him as like a source of power. Like, we saw Igneel, he kind of like had Atlas Flame's number, let's just say that. But no, in all seriousness, we saw what type of trouble Atlas Flame gave the Natsu and the others. Like, he was no joke, and the fact that Igneel was able to defeat him and all the other fire dragons just goes to show you that yeah, this guy Igneel was definitely not something to mess with. Now, the next point that I wanted to talk about for Igneel is actually him being able to scare off Grandini. Now, we seen early on in the series when it first showed Igneel and Grandini's encounter, we saw Igneel, he was basically like, yo, what are you doing here? Get out of here. And he basically ended up screaming and yelling and scaring her off. Now, obviously, I don't think that Grandini wanted any smoke with Igneel, but the fact that Igneel basically had control and power over all the other dragons, good stuff, and it still does show you his strength. And speaking of his power, we have to mention the fact that he was the only dragon to stand up to Acnologia. Yes, we know that all the dragons, they weren't in their primes, their energies were being drained, but despite all that, Igneel was the only dragon to be able to stand up against Acnologia. So that just goes to show you that in his prime, who's to say that Igneel might not have had a better chance to fight up against Acnologia? Because we saw what Igneel did to Acnologia in their final fight. He was able to take off his arm, and they were pretty much evenly matched for the most part up until Acnologia decided to get serious. But still, we saw that Igneel, he was able to hold his own. He was even giving Acnologia trouble while he wasn't in his prime. So imagine an Igneel in his prime versus an Acnologia. I definitely do think that at Igneel, he would not just take off an arm of Acnologia. He definitely would have took off a lot more. So I definitely do think we have to give props to Igneel for being able to stand up against Acnologia while he wasn't in his prime. So I definitely do think that even though he did die up against Acnologia, we have to remember that he wasn't 100% and he was still able to do that much damage to him. I mean, he took off half the man's arm and it injured him for a long time. And last but not least, I just wanted to throw this in here, but we know that his power is strong enough to kill Zverev. Yes, we know that Natsu, he basically ended up using Igneel's power in order to defeat an immortal, and Natsu said it himself that these were Igneel's flames. So we know that Igneel, the spirit of Igneel, obviously it was on Natsu's whole arm with the tattoo and stuff. So the fact that his flames were that strong enough to be able to kill Zverev, that's also a huge bonus in Igneel's favor. So I definitely do think that Igneel, he definitely cannot be slept on when it comes to being one of the strongest dragons. Now that we are done with Igneel, I definitely have to say that the next person who I want to discuss is Acnologia. Yes, we had to bring him up. Now, we know that Acnologia, he is basically the starter of the Dragon King ritual. Now, we know that he basically ended up killing off multiple dragons once he saw that the dragons had killed off that little girl in the Fairy Tale Dragon Cry movie, and that moment was basically deemed as the Dragon King Festival. So after Acnologia ended up killing all the dragons, that's what basically ended up starting the Dragon King Festival. So that just goes to show you that this guy, he is no joke. To be able to kill off multiple dragons in Fairy Tale is not an easy task, because we've seen Natsu and the others, they still haven't been able to kill dragons, and they're called dragon slayers. So we know that that is a very tall task to do. So props to Acnologia for being able to kill off that many. Now, the next thing that I want to discuss is him actually being able to take on Gildarts. Now, he basically demolished Gildarts like with ease. So that just goes to show you that his strength is definitely something that we cannot put down, because he was able to take out one of the strongest humans in Fairy Tale, take off one of his arms, and we saw Gildarts basically wanted no more smoke with him after that. And on top of that, we know that he basically ended up taking out God Serena too. Yes, he was able to make light work of God Serena. So I definitely do think, because Acnologia was able to take out some of the strongest humans, definitely does go to show you that he is definitely he could definitely hold his own against some of these stronger humans and the dragons at the same time. And speaking of him being able to fight up against humans and dragons, let's talk about him at Tenro Island, because we saw he took on the whole Fairy Tale guild, and had it not been for Mavis putting up the fairy spear and the little protection, they would have all been done for. So Acnologia was really able to take on the whole Fairy Tale guild and pretty much came away unscathed. So that just goes to show you that this guy, he is still pretty darn strong, and he was able to take on Makarov while Makarov was going full power. So yeah, Acnologia was able to take on the whole Fairy Tale guild. Hell, he sent them into the time skip himself. Now, one of his most oppressive feats is definitely him being able to fight Zverev one-on-one. But even though we got robbed and we were never able to see them fight one-on-one, we know that Zverev, he respected Acnologia enough to never try to engage him in battle, even after he lost his arm. So I definitely do think that Zverev acknowledging Acnologia's strength was definitely one of his biggest moments. So that was definitely one of the coolest moments for Acnologia. And speaking of Zverev, he had to go and make a whole army just to fight him. Yes, we know that he ended up creating the Speargon 12 just so that he could fight Acnologia later on. So the fact that he ended up getting all the strong mages such as August, Irene, you know, all these people, Arcade, in order to fight Acnologia, that goes to show you how much he was preparing and how much he truly does think that someone is that strong compared to him. And not to mention the fact that he wanted very hard himself. So I definitely do think that his enemies definitely did do a good job at complementing Acnologia's strength. And last but not least, the two things I want to discuss was, number one, Acnologia basically ate a black hole. Yes, he was able to eat the time lapse, the magic that everybody feared. We saw that he basically ate it, and it was supposed to kill him. Yes, Anna, everybody, they use that as a little diversion, and the fact that he was able to eat that, which was basically nothing, goes to show you that his magic power is unknown. But on top of that, he was also able to take on the 7 dragon slayers all by himself, and he pretty much demolished them up until they all combined their powers. So that just goes to show you that Acnologia, he definitely did have a strong run while he was alive. And the third and final dragon that I do want to bring up is the newest one that we were introduced to, and that is Mercuphobia, aka the water dragon god. And ever since we got introduced to his dragon form, I definitely do have to say that he is in candidacy for being one of the strongest dragons, simply because we saw that in his dragon form, he was basically confirmed to be bigger than Igneel by the other people, by Natsu and the others. And on top of that, he was able to withstand attacks from the whole Fairy Tail Guild, while they even had Dragon Slayer enchantment magics on them. Because we saw Wendy, she enchanted Urza, Gray, and Lucy so they can use dragons, so they could have Dragon Slayer effects on their magic. And even with all that, he was still able to stand tall after taking all their attacks. So I definitely do have to say that his defense is something else. And we also see that in his human form, he's able to use creation magic. He's able to turn anybody into anything. So I definitely do think that his magic, while he's in his human form, is still OP. And last but not least, we know that the white mage was basically obsessed with one of his magic powers. So I definitely do think that that's a huge sign of how strong he is, because we know that the white mage, she's somebody that's on Xeris level, and she is only going around trying to steal strong people's magic. So the fact that she was basically dying to get his goes to show you how strong the water dragon god could be. But the water dragon god is literally only the beginning, because we know that the water dragon god is only one of the 5 holy pentadrakes. Yes, one of the 5 holy pentadrakes. So that means that there are going to be 4 more new dragon gods that we haven't even been revealed to. So the reason why I'm making this video is because as we're recording right now, I want to discuss who is the strongest dragon right now. Because before we get revealed to all the other ones, I know that a lot of people, they've been wondering who was the king of dragons right now, obviously because the whole Dragon King festival. And me personally, I still do think that Acnologia, he is the strongest dragon, only because he was able to devour nothing. Like, he was able to devour the time lapse, and the only reason why he really lost is because he wasn't able to control the power. And had he been able to control the fairy heart once he earned the time lapse, once he ate it, he would have definitely been super strong. So while we haven't been introduced to the rest of the 4 dragon gods, I definitely do think that the water dragon god, he does come in 2nd place, and Igneel will come in 3rd. But overall, who do you guys think the strongest dragon is in the series of Fairy Tail right now? Comment what you guys think down below. Subscribe if you haven't. Peace out.